Slowly, I stopped hiding what I did for work. Not with some big dramatic announcement. Just quietly, one conversation at a time, I stopped flinching when it came up. It sounds like such a small shift when I say it out loud now, but it changed the entire texture of that season of my life. I don't know exactly how long I'll be at that small desk with the borrowed chair, and the name tag that still spells my name slightly wrong. Maybe it's a stepping stone to somewhere bigger. Maybe one day it becomes something more than I can currently imagine. Honestly, that isn't even the point of this video, and I don't want you walking away thinking it is. The point is this. The soft empire was never going to be built from a position of already having everything figured out. It is built from wherever you actually are standing right now, even if wherever you are standing is a shared desk, a temporary login that expires every 90 days, and a job title that doesn't match the story you thought you would be telling by now. I said no to him at my front door in part 5. In part 6, I told you about the long, quiet work of rebuilding myself from the inside out. And this is the unglamorous middle nobody ever shows you. The starting over from absolute zero. The small desk. The shame I had to sit with and outlast. The proof slowly, stubbornly building that I do not need a title or a ring or anyone else's permission to be worth something. If this one hit differently for you, if you are living your own low status, starting over season right now, in a job or a life that doesn't match the story you thought you'd be telling by this point, I see you. I was you. Subscribe and let's keep building this together, one quiet, unglamorous, entirely our step at a time. And then something happened that I did not expect. That low-status job gave me something the entire relationship, at its very best, had never given me. It gave me a paycheck that was completely, entirely mine. Small. Modest. Nothing to brag about. But deposited every 2 weeks into an account that only I controlled, that no one could quietly drain while I wasn't looking. I remember the first time I paid a bill using money I had earned completely on my own, with absolutely no complicated feelings attached to where it came from, no strings, no debt to anyone's ego. It felt almost anticlimactic in the moment. No fireworks. No triumphant music. Just a quiet, steady kind of relief that settled somewhere deep in my chest and stayed there. That was the moment I finally understood what kind of empire I actually wanted to build. It was never going to come from a title, or a status, or a man's ring sitting in a velvet box at my front door. It was going to come from exactly this. Small. Boring. Unbearably consistent. One paycheck at a time. One bill at a time. One quiet, unremarkable morning at a time, proving to myself again and again that I could take care of me. I had to grieve something along the way that I hadn't expected to grieve. The story of the woman who had it all figured out early. The one who never had to start over. The one whose life looked seamless and effortless from the outside. The one strangers online admired without ever seeing the cracks. Letting go of that story was its own kind of heartbreak, separate entirely from him, sharper in some ways because it was mine alone to carry. But underneath that grief was something quieter. Something more honest than anything I had felt in years. I didn't need to have it all figured out early. I needed, instead, to become someone who could rebuild from absolutely anywhere, at any point in her life, without falling apart completely. That mattered infinitely more than any early advantage ever could have. There were days I thought seriously about quitting. Not because the work itself was difficult. Filing is not difficult. But because staying meant facing that ache fresh every single morning before I'd even had coffee. It would have been so much easier to stay home. To wait for something that felt more like the old me to appear and rescue me from having to feel this small. But I stayed. And somewhere in the staying without my permission, something started to shift. I began noticing small things about myself I had forgotten. I was good, genuinely good, at the parts of the job that involved taking chaos and making it make sense. A disorganized inbox, a filing system nobody could navigate. A scheduling nightmare no one else wanted to touch. I could walk into that mess and quietly, methodically, turn it into order. And there was something deeply satisfying in that. Something that had absolutely nothing to do with status or title or who was watching. I started arriving early. Not because anyone required it of me, but because those 15 quiet minutes before the office filled with noise became something sacred, something entirely mine. I started lighting a candle at home before I left, just for the ritual of it. I built a specific playlist for the drive and songs that made the version of me sitting in traffic feel like she was choosing this, not just enduring it. Small things. Rituals nobody else would ever notice or understand the weight of. I was quietly practicing something I hadn't practiced in years. Showing up for myself fully, in a place that offered me nothing back in status or admiration, and doing it anyway, day after day with no one clapping. At lunch that first day, I sat alone in my car in the parking lot with the engine off, and I didn't cry, not exactly, but something in my chest cracked open anyway. It wasn't because the work was hard. It was because it felt like proof. Proof of how far I had fallen. Proof that everything I thought I had built before, the image, the security, the sense that I was a woman things simply worked out for, had been an illusion the whole time. And this small desk, this borrowed chair, this name tag with my name spelled slightly wrong. This was the truth underneath all of it. I have to talk about the shame because nobody prepares you for how loud it gets. I started doing this thing where, if anyone asked what I did for work, I would go vague almost instantly. I changed the subject before they could ask a follow-up question. Not because the job itself was shameful. Filing papers and answering phones is not a moral failing, and I knew that logically, but because it didn't match the story I had spent years quietly building about who I was. I had built an identity brick by brick around having it together. The almost wedding. The image people admired without knowing what was underneath it. The sense that I was a woman things simply worked out for, effortlessly, gracefully. And now here I was starting from zero, entry level, and there was a small vicious voice in my head that kept whispering the same sentence on a loop. This is what you get for trusting the wrong person. This is your punishment. You should have known. I need to say this clearly to you and to the version of me sitting in that parking lot. That voice was lying. Rebuilding from the very bottom is not a punishment. It is simply what rebuilding looks like when it's real instead of performed for an audience. After everything with the money, after I discovered exactly how much had been hidden from me, how much had quietly disappeared while I trusted blindly, the truth I was left with was brutal in its simplicity. I didn't have the safety net I thought I had. I didn't have the career I thought I still had either, because somewhere in the last year of that relationship I had stopped fighting for myself. I had stopped applying, stopped updating anything. I had poured every ounce of ambition I owned into building a life around him, and none of it into building a life that was actually mine. So when I finally sat down alone at my kitchen table at 11 at night, staring at what was left of my life on a legal pad, the options in front of me weren't inspiring. They weren't glamorous. They were survival. And one of them was an entry-level admin job at a company I would never have mentioned out loud a year earlier. A job I would have been embarrassed by. A job that, in my old life, would have felt like a punishment. I took it anyway. Because the alternative was drowning with better branding. I need to be honest with you about how that first day actually felt, because I think people assume rebuilding looks inspiring from the inside like a movie montage with the right lighting. Doesn't. Not at first. Not even close. I sat down at a small desk that wasn't mine in any real sense. Shared equipment. A temporary login that expired every 90 days. A stack of filing so tall it nearly hid my face from the person across from me. I answered phones for people who had no idea who I used to be. I made copies of documents I didn't understand for a department I barely remembered the name of by lunchtime. I did the kind of work that, 1 year earlier, I would have considered so far beneath me that I wouldn't have even let myself imagine it. If you've been with me since part 1, you already know how this story started. Someone I trusted lied to me for months, quietly, carefully, while I built an entire future on top of his silence. I found out the truth in pieces. From strangers who knew before I did. From a bank statement that didn't lie the way he did. From a woman who somehow knew my own wedding better than I did. And it ended with him standing at my door, ring in hand, asking me to forget all of it and go back like nothing had happened. I said no. I want you to understand what that no actually cost me because I don't think I fully understood it myself in that moment. Saying no to him wasn't just closing a door on a person. It was closing a door on an entire imagined life. The house, the name, the safety, the story I had already told myself about how my 30s would look. When that door closed, it didn't just close quietly. It slammed, and everything on the other side of it went with him. After part 6, so many of you messaged me. You told me you cried. You told me you felt proud of me for choosing myself. And I meant every single word of that video, every bit of it was true. But I left something out because it didn't fit the ending I wanted to give you. It didn't fit the version of healing that looks beautiful on camera. Here's what I left out. Choosing yourself does not come with a soft landing. Sometimes it comes with a fall, a real one. Sometimes it comes with a desk that isn't yours, a name tag that feels like a stranger's, and a job title so far beneath what you used to have that saying it out loud makes your whole chest tighten. This is that part of the story, the part nobody claps for.